Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Chesterton's Jest, where we shine an unflinching light on the joys, contradictions, and crises within today's Catholic Church and culture. If you're here for faith, wit, and a little righteous fire, you're in the right place. Smash that like button, share this video with your fellow troublemakers, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now then, shall we begin? Our topic, up for discussion today: the paradox of modern gender medicine. Chapter 1. The New Compassion. Imagine a well-meaning doctor who sees a troubled child and prescribes a most curious cure to pause the child's own development. In our age of radical empathy, this pass for compassion. A girl says she feels more like a boy, and the new kindness decrees that we stop her puberty in its tracks. No one doubts the sincerity of the parents or the earnestness of the clinicians. They truly wish to ease the child's distress. Yet one is reminded of an old paradox. Sometimes, in our zeal to help, we may do great harm. Modern medicine, in all its mercy, has contrived to freeze childhood itself, as if the body were an enemy to be subdued for the sake of the mind. In earlier days, a child who loathed their changing body might be gently guided, given time and counselling. Today, the answer from certain experts is astonishingly literal. Halt the changes, suppress nature, and hope for the best. This new compassion is fierce and urgent. Better a halted puberty than a child in pain, they reason. Yet it treats a temporary turmoil with a permanent intervention. The road to hell, it's said, is paved with good intentions. One cannot help but wonder if we are paving that road for our children with the cobblestones of misplaced mercy. Chapter 2. The Unquestioned Cure. For a few short years, this drastic cure was nearly unquestionable. To doubt the wisdom of giving puberty blockers to a 12-year-old was to invite scorn and accusations of cruelty. Activists insisted it was life-saving care, the only path for a child in distress. Thus, a new orthodoxy was established: affirm, medicate, and any hesitation is bigotry. Yet reality, like truth, has a way of intruding. When bold researchers and doctors finally peeked behind the curtain, they found the great and powerful Oz was a frail illusion. In the UK, an independent review led by Dr. Hilary Cass spent 4 years combing through the evidence and came back shaking its head. Where was the solid science? The reviewers found precious little. The National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, NICE, had examined every study of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones in youth, and their verdict was sobering. The supposed benefits of this brave new treatment were unsupported by high-quality evidence. The improvements in mental health that were promised? In study after study, they either did not materialize or could not be disentangled from bias. The grand claim that halting puberty gives a child time to think fell flat when it turned out nearly every child put on blockers went on to the next step of hormones anyway. Rather than a careful pause, blockers seemed to set kids on a conveyor belt. One landmark Dutch study, the very foundation of this practice, was reviewed and deemed at high risk of bias and poor quality overall. In short, the emperors of gender medicine had no clothes that could withstand rigorous inspection. And what of safety? Here the silence was even more deafening. Long-term effects were largely unknown. As the Cass review summarized, these drugs are powerful, with unproven benefits and significant risks. A sensible society would normally demand robust proof before inflicting irreversible changes on minors, but under the spell of the new dogma, that proof was assumed rather than obtained. Chesterton's spirit of skepticism, his insistence on asking basic, common-sense questions, was sorely missing. Instead, a generation of children became guinea pigs in a grand experiment, all in the name of affirmation. Chapter 3, Breaking the Spell. It couldn't last. Reality snapped back, first in Europe's most progressive nations. Sweden, long known for its social liberalism, did something profoundly old-fashioned. It conducted a thorough evidence review. The Swedish National Board of Health and Welfare concluded in 2022 that for most youth, the risks of puberty blockers and gender-affirming treatment are likely to outweigh the expected benefits. Henceforth, such interventions would be offered only in exceptional cases within research settings. In nearby Finland, health authorities had already flagged these treatments as experimental and shifted emphasis back to psychotherapy. And in England, Dr. Cass's findings prompted the NHS to fundamentally reverse course. The lone gender clinic at London's Tavistock was shut down. New regional centres were tasked with providing holistic mental health care instead of a fast track to hormones. Puberty blockers, once handed out like a panacea, were reclassified as an experimental drug to be used only in formal clinical trials. By 2024, the NHS went so far as to ban their routine use entirely, even in private clinics, until strong evidence can demonstrate safety and benefit. It is a rich irony. Not long ago, British doctors were told to unquestioningly affirm gender-diverse youth. Now, the official policy is proceed with utmost caution. Across the Atlantic, where some states still rush forward, they often cite international standards. But those standards are crumbling in the very countries that pioneered them. Even France and Norway have voiced concern. The spell of infallibility surrounding gender-affirming medicine has been broken by a simple question: does it actually work? Chapter 4, Consequences and Regrets. What happens when the dust of this grand experiment settles? Here we confront the human face of the issue, the children themselves now becoming young adults, and the bodies and lives irrevocably changed. We meet a young woman, for instance, who was once a dysphoric girl. At 13, she was lauded for her bravery as she took puberty blockers. At 15, she was placed on testosterone. At 16, her healthy breasts were removed. Now, at 22, she stands among us with a voice deepened, scars across her chest, and a profound sense of betrayal. Her distress did not vanish. It merely changed form. She speaks of wishing someone had told her that it's okay not to fit in as a girl, that her body wasn't a mistake to be corrected. She is not alone. Detransitioners, those who regret and reverse their gender medicalization, are emerging in growing numbers, telling similar stories. They ask, with anger and heartbreak, why did no one slow me down? Why was I allowed to make such permanent decisions as a kid? These are hard questions for a society to face. Then there are those who may not loudly protest, but quietly suffer. Consider the physical toll. A boy put on puberty blockers at 12 will never develop sperm. If he proceeds to female hormones at 16, he'll be sterilized before he's old enough to vote. Years later, if he grows into a man who might have wanted a family, that door will be closed. A girl who takes testosterone will have a permanently altered voice and possibly a compromised ability to bear children. These youngsters often cannot comprehend such stakes at their age. The very idea would have been unthinkable not long ago, to knowingly trade away a child's future fertility and sexual function in hopes of easing a present identity crisis. Yet, it was done under the banner of love. Furthermore, blocking puberty is not the gentle pause it was sold as. Doctors now acknowledge it weakens bone development at the very age kids should be growing stronger. It may affect brain development and future sexual maturation. We simply don't know all the consequences. One thing we do know: virtually every child given puberty blockers winds up on the road to full medical transition. In essence, We have been steering children onto a one-way path long before they could possibly understand where it leads. And while proponents claim regret is rare, that claim rings hollow as we listen to the new chorus of young adults bringing lawsuits and writing memoirs about how they feel deceived by the affirm or else system. Even if the percentage who deeply regret is small, each is a tragedy, a life marked by medical interventions that cannot be undone. How much regret is too much when we are talking about healthy organs removed and natural puberty denied? Perhaps any non-zero number should give us pause. Chapter 5. Rebuilding the Fence. G.K. Chesterton once spoke of the fence of tradition, the idea that we should not tear down a fence until we know why it was put up. In our rush to showcase modern tolerance, we tore down the old safeguards in medicine and parenting. We discarded caution, an age-old wisdom, practically overnight, declaring that affirmation was the only virtuous path. Now, chastened by experience, we begin to see why that fence was there. It protected children's developmental years, acknowledging that identity solidifies over time and that youth is a tumultuous, ever-changing season. It ensured that before we do something irreversible, we exhaust gentler options. Having removed that fence, we found children wandering into peril. Now is the moment to rebuild. That does not mean a return to ignorance or cruelty. Far from it. We do not dismiss a young person's feelings. We care for them, but we also guide them. Real compassion is sometimes saying no, or not yet, when the crowd is chanting yes immediately. Real love seeks the long-term good of the beloved, not the quick fix that wins approval. In practical terms, rebuilding the fence means prioritizing psychological support, allowing adolescents to explore their identity without irreversibly altering their bodies at 14. It means informed consent that is truly informed, bluntly explaining to families the experimental nature of these interventions, the uncertainties and risks, as well as the possibility that the dysphoria may resolve on its own. It means listening to detransitioners and learning from their hindsight. And above all, it means humility. The humility to admit that we got ahead of the evidence and ahead of ourselves. In this 12-minute journey, we have seen a strange paradox unfold. In trying to liberate children from their discomfort, we shackled them to medical treatments and lifelong consequences. Our age believed it was pioneering a more enlightened world, but perhaps it was chasing a new superstition, the belief that we can mold reality to the wish of the moment with no cost. As the dust settles, we can take heart that truth has a way of reasserting itself. The task now is not to despair, but to correct course. The world can be mad and merry, as Chesterton knew, but sanity and common sense are never truly lost. They can be found again, often right where we left them. In the end, our children deserve nothing less. We owe them patience, honesty, and the protection of that good old fence of reason until they are grown enough to choose for themselves. This, indeed, may be the truest act of love and justice we can offer in a world gone a bit askew. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed today's video and share our passion for defending the true faith with a touch of humor, smash that like button. Share this video with your fellow troublemakers and subscribe so you never miss an episode. As Chesterton once said, a madman is not someone who has lost his reason. A madman is someone who has lost everything except his reason. So, let's keep our reason and our faith intact together. Thanks for listening. God bless you, and may the good Lord be praised.